Welcome to the Agent of Wealth podcast with Mark Bautis from Bautis Financial. In this podcast, Mark helps guide you towards financial freedom, ensure you never run out of money, and create a balance in life that prioritizes what is most important to you. Join us for this journey as Mark draws from years of expertise and guest experts to solve the multiple wealth building challenges involved in your financial life.
Welcome back to the Agent of Wealth podcast. This is your co-host, John Williams. And today we're diving into a topic that nearly every family encounters sooner or later: how to navigate the world of senior living. Choosing the right type of care for a loved one can feel overwhelming, emotional, and incredibly confusing. But it doesn't have to be, especially when you have the right guidance. Our guest today, Melina Owusu, brings exactly that. She's a certified senior advisor and the owner of CarePatrol of Metro North Jersey, where she helps seniors and their families find safe, personalized senior living options, whether that's independent living, assisted living, or memory care, all at no cost to the family. Melina takes a truly hands-on approach, assessing each person's care needs, budget, and preferences, and then personally guides them through community tours and the full placement process. Her mission is simple: to make senior care easier, safer, and far less overwhelming, while ensuring families feel informed and supported at every step. So Melina, welcome to the show.
John, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm so excited for this conversation. I was telling you even before we started that we come across this all the time, and it is confusing and emotional and a tough time typically, whether we're dealing with it for ourselves or we're helping a loved one. So I'm really interested in unpacking this here. But before we get started, I thought it'd be great to just kind of dive into career journey, what transitioned you from sales teams to becoming a certified senior advisor. Just give us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so John, thank you. I've been in various roles over the past decade, and starting my career in HR and payroll. Later on, decided to pivot into sales, specifically franchise sales. While in sales, I decided to kind of go on the entrepreneurship route, starting back in 2019, where my husband and I, we started a commercial/residential cleaning company. And then as of late, we've kind of even prior to that, after we did the cleaning company, we also did business back in where our parents are from in Ghana, in the set marketing space. And then as of 2024, decided to go in the franchising world into the senior care space. So I have a wealth of knowledge in, different industries, but really wanted to be in a space where things felt meaningful, right? I was actually helping people. I was making an impact, and I was helping folks navigate through something that they didn't even know would come to be at a certain point. I got introduced by one of my franchise brokers, who was a great friend of mine / mentor. And he introduced the concept of CarePatrol to me. I fell in love with it, and I've been doing it ever since.
So it was really just kind of fell on your lap. Like you said that this friend of yours, and it was just like an opportunity. And
yes.
Was there anything else in your life that kind of spoke to that as well, and kind of that was part of that kind of eye-opening experience?
No, I mean, I'm very well versed in the franchising space. So because that's how I started my sales career, in franchising. So I understand the business and how the franchising business model works. But in terms of this particular concept, this good friend of mine who I've known from my sales career from years ago, when he introduced this concept to me, I said, I think this is it. Because it was something that I finally, not only do I get to enjoy my calling, which I feel is, sales and connecting with people, networking and things of that nature, but I was going to be able to marry both not only sales, but also leaving an impact and helping people navigate through something that is a very challenging time in their life.
That's a great story. Maybe we even just at a high level start with CarePatrol. And for those who maybe aren't familiar with the company and what you do, just give us a high level idea of exactly what CarePatrol does.
Yeah, so CarePatrol has been around since it got started in 1993. It was started by a social worker named Chuck Bongiovanni. He realized that back during his time, that folks were being placed into, communities, whether it was nursing home back in the day, and it wasn't a fit, right? No one was taking the time to really analyze the situation, understand the client or the patient's journey, where they are, and to really assess, is this even the place for them to be, depending on where they are in their journey when it comes to their current diagnosis. So hence why he started this company called CarePatrol. He's since grown the business to what it is today, is about 220 plus of us across the United States. So it's a huge company. He's also, there's also other complementary businesses that fall under a big parent company named Best Life Brands. So underneath that, we have CarePatrol. You have a home care agency, and you have other brands that are complementary to what we're doing here in CarePatrol. I myself, I'm a certified, not only am I a franchisee of CarePatrol Metro North New Jersey, but I'm also a certified senior advisor. And my job is really simple: to help families navigate the complexities of finding the best fit when it comes to independent living, assisted living, memory care, as well as home care options.
Excellent. Seems there's a lot of different directions you can go depending on the needs of the patient, the client. The confusion many times lies in the differences between the different types of care: independent living, assisted living, memory care. Could you maybe just for our audience briefly explain the differences between those different types of care?
Yeah, for sure. So independent living is typically 55 plus. So you have to be 55 years or older. It is a community of those who are in the same age group. It's kind of typically like a condo type of style, apartment style, either one bedroom or two beds, one bath, that kind of setup. But you're in a community with other folks, right? So you get to do activities together. Get to go on trips with one another. The difference there is that there's no care that's provided. So there's no like nursing on staff. There's no like caretakers on staff, right? It's literally, think about you living in an apartment, but you're in a complex with other folks that are in the same age group as you. And you get to kind of be around one another, and you foster that sense of community. So that's independent living. Typically people will go into that when, they want to downsize, or, kids have gone off to school. They don't need the 4-bedroom, 3-bath house anymore. So they want to go into something a little bit smaller, but still they want to have that sense of community around them. So they'll go into a space like that. Or, they live alone and they feel, let me go into a place where I can be around others who are within my same age group. Then you fall into assisted living. Assisted living, it's an actual community. Some of them can be residential style, like think of a home where it has been turned into an actual assisted living community where there's beds. So some of the residential styles are more on the smaller side. So maybe like 16 beds or 16 rooms. But there's care on staff, right? So they have a nurse on staff. They have caretakers on staff. You're getting your meals there. You're getting breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Independent living is a little bit different. They may, depending on the setup of the independent living, you may have breakfast and dinner, and then you can opt in for lunch if you want to, right? But they give you that option. But when it comes to the assisted living side, not only are you getting care, but you're also getting 3 meals. You're getting your breakfast, lunch, and dinner on top of your care. Then you have memory care. Memory care is for those who have been diagnosed with dementia. So it can be, from this kind of startup of which is, can be mild cognitive all the way up onto when, the diagnosis progresses into its later stages. So there are memory care, specific communities. And then there's also assisted living that does memory care as well, that they've combined. It's all in one space, but the assisted living may be on the first and second floor, and then maybe memory care is on the third floor.
Thanks for the explanation. The distinction between those 3 areas seems clear, but what comes to my mind is the gray area. I mean, it must be difficult from that transition from independent living to assisted living, and like the expectation that they're going to need assisted living and so on and so forth. Is there a way to kind of navigate that and that kind of like gray area where like they're like mom's kind of getting a little slower? Is she really how much longer is she going to be living by herself? Will people just go into assisted living facilities because they're anticipating that things are slowing down a little bit? I mean, how does that all work?
There's no like one size fits all approach. It really depends on where the individual is in their journey. It depends on where the individual is coming from, right? It may look different than someone who's coming from home, who has been living home, and they're pretty much okay, but they may need, they live on their own, maybe they do have adult children that live maybe, let's say, I'm just going to use an example. Let's say mom lives in Jersey, but children live in other states or live in other countries. So mom is alone, right? Maybe mom had a husband, but maybe husband passed away a few years ago. Now mom is on her own. but she does need some sort of care, right? Maybe she needs, like, she's on medication for various things. Maybe she has like high blood pressure. Maybe she had like a heart attack in the past, right? So she is on some sort of medication management. And she needs care. So she needs eyes on her, right? Because now she's living by herself. Typically, some people may want to, explore the idea before even going into a community. They may say, you know what? We want to look at home care options, right? We don't feel like mom is ready just as of yet to make that transition into actually going into assisted living community. How about we take a look at exploring some home care options? So they may start off with that, right? Start off with home care. They have, you work with a home care agency. They'll get a home care aide in, couple of hours a day, a few times a week, depending on what the case is and the severity. And then they'll just give mom that type of care, right? And then, maybe things may progress. Maybe mom falls, right? The number one cases that we see and why people, seniors tend to decline very rapidly are falls, right? Mom is falling on the stairs. Mom is falling in the bathroom, right? Because a lot of these houses that, our parents or seniors have lived in, I mean, they're houses that were built in the 50s, 60s, right? And they're not, as they're growing older, they're not really conducive to someone who's of age, right? Who may have balance issues and things of that nature. There's no grab bars in the showers, even maybe the stairs. There's nothing to grab on as he or she's going up and, down the stairs. So falls tend to happen because as you get older, right, your bones tend to shrink. You start to experience some balance issues and things of that nature. So these are all things that you need to take into consideration. So what I will say, it really just depends on where the person is in their journey. And that way we can determine, once, you're working with folks like myself, we can really come in and assess the situation just to really know what the best option is for this individual.
But that kind of leads me to my next question for you, specifically working with you and what that potentially looks like the initial assessment. When someone says, hey, I want to work with Melina, this sounds great, and they come to you, like, what does that look like in the beginning?
So what that looks like when they come to me, I do what is called a care discovery. Typically, folks that I'm working with are usually the adult children or whoever the loved one is of the client. Very rarely am I working with the client themselves, the actual individual that will get placed into a community or the actual individual that they're looking for home care for. Typically, is adult children or the loved one, or it could sometimes even be the POA, depending. Again, every situation is very different. But when it comes to me, I do what is called a care discovery, just to understand this, the client that we're talking about, what their interest was, what's their hobbies, what was their past career, what are some of the, the fun things that they like to do, what their current diagnosis is. Some of this information I may have already, depending on where they are. Maybe if they're in a rehab or if they're in a hospital, I may get some of this information from the social worker. But if not, I still like to, kind of go through, my set of questions that I have when I do my care discovery, just to know what they can and cannot do when it comes to activities of daily living. Can they shower on their own? Can they dress themselves? Do they have balance issues? Is there a history of falls? What kind of medication are they on? How many medication are they taking? Are they taking 1 to 3? Are they taking 4 to 8? Are they taking more than 9? Who their current doctors are? Are they seeing any specialists? Do they have dementia? If so, what is the severity? All of these questions I ask to gather the bigger picture, the huge scope of this individual. And once I do that part, I do what is called a financial discovery. And that just really helps me to understand where the person is financially, right? Because the reality is I can tour the world with this individual, right, that I'm working with, but I want to make sure that they can afford it too, right? Because it's just like as a realtor, right? If you're a realtor and you're showing your home, right, you want to make sure the person is pre-approved for a certain amount. So if the person is only pre-approved for $300,000, you're not going to show them a $500,000 house, right? You're going to show them what, fits in their budget. So it's the same thing, with me as well. I just want to ensure that they have the budget because this is private pay. It's not covered through insurance. So I want to ensure that they have the funds that they can cover month to month, the expenses that come along with putting your loved one in a community.
You just hit on something that is on a lot of people's minds, and obviously paying for this and is a big one, right? Because it's some of these assisted livings. I mean, you run the gamut. It can be upwards of $12,000 to $15,000 a month to be in some of these facilities, and not everybody has that amount of money. And quite frankly, some people have it for a while, but don't after they go through their assets. Is there a Medicaid aspect of the help that you provide?
Yeah, so great question. So it will come a point in time, as you mentioned, where they run out of money, right? Typically in Jersey here is a 24-month spend down. So you pay privately for 24 months. And, once you're down to kind of your last $2,000, then you'll start to apply for Medicaid. 10% Jersey state law, 10% of rooms have been allocated towards Medicaid rooms or Medicaid beds. And, typically with that, there is most times a wait list and things of that nature. So these are all things that when when you're working with me, we look at all of that, right? Because we want to know. And that's why part of why I do the financial discovery, to know, like, okay, with what we're looking at now with this financial picture that we have here, with knowing if this person has Social Security, pension, any sort of investments, long-term care insurance, assets in terms of do they have a home? Are they going to sell the home? If they do sell the home, how much is the home going to sell for? We look at all of that, and that allows me to know, like, okay, this person is going to have funds for, I don't know, the next 3 years, right? So after we know the third year, we know, okay, this is when we're going to have to start having those conversations about, Medicaid. So at that point, some communities have a Medicaid specialist in-house that they will go ahead and start, do that process for them. If not, then you would have to find a Medicaid specialist to help you with the process and, putting things, especially if you have assets, putting things into, trust. But all of those conversations should be had relatively early, so you're not scratching your head at the end trying to figure things out. So you should start having those preliminary conversations. I have external resources for that, so that at least we know how to go about things, right? Because if you're going to put things in a trust, Medicaid will do a 5-year look back into, your finances. So you want to make sure that you're covered. You have things in a trust where you've spoken to, an estate planner to ensure that all of that is taken care of.
You seem really passionate about this, and you seem like a really nice person, but I don't think you're so nice that you work for free. And we did mention at the beginning that this is all free to the families. Now, obviously, I know that there's some sort of somewhere where you're getting compensated.
Yes.
Is it fair to ask that question, to like how that all works?
That is very fair. And I think, part of my service, I'm very transparent, right? I do let the families know that it is of no cost for them to utilize my services. The way how I am compensated is once I do a move-in, that's when the community will then go ahead and pay me I take a percentage of rent and care. So I have close relationships with, all of the communities that I work closely with within the counties that I cover.
Excellent. Okay. I thought that might be the angle there. And it sounds like a great little model, because these communities, they want to fill these rooms, and there may be a lot of situations where, and it's costly to the actual client. So it seems like a win-win the way that that's set up. What are some of the common mistakes people make in this space? I mean, some of the things that, people do and when they're starting down this journey.
What I have seen is that people wait to the last minute. With the clients that I deal with, is 9 times out of 10 is a very reactive approach. It's not proactive. It's not, we've kind of seen this. We're noticing this with mom, or we're noticing this with dad. Let's start having some preliminary conversations, see what our options are, see what what is out there, and let's explore those options. It's typically crisis mode. Mom is getting discharged from rehab next week. They said she can't go home. We need to find her a place now. It's those type of situations. What I will say to that is, I can't stress the fact enough of trying to ensure that you educate yourself for the resources that are out there, because there are resources out there, right? There's folks, like myself, that I can really support you and help you navigate through the complexities of this. There's certain, even if you're looking on your own, because typically what people do, like, because they're in crunch mode. It's time is ticking. They have to find something. They have to find something fast, right? So when you're in a position like that, sometimes you're not really thinking about, like, okay, is this place going to really give the care that they say they're going to? You just want to find a place that mom is going to get there, and they're going to be able to take care of her, right? That's just what, as an adult child, that is what you're typically thinking of. You're not thinking about all the other logistics and what can even come later. So those are kind of some of the things that, I've seen in my time in doing this, of folks, being very reactive, and sometimes they wait too long. And by the time they do want to make a decision, at this point, the person has passed. I've gotten a lot of those where Unfortunately, the individual didn't make it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, let's be honest, this doesn't seem, it's not the most exciting thing to want to talk about.
It's not.
Very important. And I'm not discounting the importance of it. It's just one of those things where it's really easy for you to emotionally just kind of sweep it under the carpet and cross that bridge when you get to it. With that said, are there things that you could share or are there things that people can do early on and when they should do those things that'll help facilitate this transition that much easier when the time does come?
Yeah, great question. One of the things they could do, I can't stress the word planning. Plan, 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 plan. Don't wait to the very last minute to do so. It's okay to seek advice. Again, like I said before, my services are free. So just get preliminary, information, go to webinars. There's a lot of support groups out there too, that have professionals like myself that, we're part of different networks, that you can find, information. You could search senior care advisors. There's information that's out there. So for me, it's more about planning, ask questions, especially a lot of times too, what I've seen is, and this is I'm going to preface it, not necessarily a fault of the adult child. I mean, of course, every family is different in terms of what the dynamics are, but some parents do tend to hide certain things from their children, right? And that's for various reasons. But, try as adult children, because of the space that I'm in, even with my parents, myself, I ask questions. Where is this? Where's your document? Which bank do you bank at? Like all of this information, am I listed as the beneficiary? Because what tends to happen now, let's say you need to access, let's say if the person that you're working with, right? Let's say if it's your mother or the dad, and they're not cognitively there, and now you are the beneficiary or you are the POA and you need to have access to the information, but you don't know where the information is. That's also another hurdle. So try to, gather as much information that you possibly can while the person is still cognitively there and knows where things are. So that way, when the time does come around, at least you're not fidgeting around and trying to figure things out. So I just say plan, ask questions, speak to an estate planner, speak to, someone who does long-term care insurance, see what your options are. There's a lot of talk around it. There's a lot of, webinars and information sessions. With the work that I do, I don't know everything, but what I can say is I know so many people in this industry that do various things and cover so many parts of what I do. So I can definitely refer out if it's something that I per se don't do myself.
So it sounds to me that are you engaging with potential clients years before you may be able to help them? I mean, is that something that you
Sometimes that happens. Yeah, sometimes that happens.
like? Let's say like yeah, like mom and dad, they're in their mid 70s, they're still getting around great, but it's something you want to make sure that you're in front of when you talk about planning and is that something you like? Would you sit down with someone and just say, hey,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's some folks who, like you said, they're okay. They live on their own. They're still able to drive. They're cognitively there. They're able to do their activities of daily living, and they're fine, right? But they want to start exploring some options when maybe even when it comes to the independent living side, they want to see what's out there. They want to know, like you asked before, what is the difference between independent living and assisted living, and even memory care, right? Because they don't know, maybe that time could come around for them. I have one family that, I was working with the husband and, he was exploring independent living options, but he wanted to know, like, okay, what's the difference with all three of them, right? And if he does start off in independent living, how is he going to, if he has to transition onto assisted living, or even if he gets to that point where he's ever going to need memory care, how does that look like? And also, are there communities that have all three? If he starts off in one place, does he have to move from one place to the next? Or is there like a community that covers all three that he could just transition through, the various channels? And there are communities like that offer all three. They have independent living, assisted living, memory care, all in one place.
do most communities participate in working with someone like you or you specifically as far as the compensation? So like, are your hands tied in any way?
For the I mean, my hands is tied in terms of, I focus in the areas that I cover. So I have 6 counties that I cover: Hudson, Bergen, Passaic, Essex County, Morris, and Sussex County. But the beautiful part of what we do is because there's so many other franchisees, and even if someone comes to me and they may be looking, let's say in Essex County, right, it's split between myself and another franchisee. So let's say they're looking in Florham Park, right? That's not an area that I cover, right? But I can work closely with the franchisee there, and we can situate that, and then myself and the franchisee will work out the logistics on the back end, right? So there's never no limitations in terms of where the individual can look, even if it's not a place that I cover myself. I'll work with that franchisee that covers that particular area.
That was great to know because actually, as we're talking here, I'm thinking like, I wonder if you cover down. My parents are in South Jersey. They're snowbirds, but I was curious how the territory works. I'm glad you answered that question. Well, is there anything else you want to share just in general? I mean, is there one thing you wish more people understood about navigating senior care, or just like the one thing you kind of leave everybody with?
I would say the one thing I would leave for people is I know it's a very hard conversation, even as John, you mentioned earlier, and sometimes you just want to sweep it under the rug and you don't want to deal with it. But it can become very overwhelming quickly if you don't know where to go and what to do when that time comes around. So I would just say try to plan as much as possible. And, sometimes I get people that come to me and from the jump, it sounds like they're ready. They want to look into what their options is. They want to tour communities and they want to get the process done, but then they start getting cold feet, and it's like, because it's emotional. You have a loved one who's been living in your home 50 years, 60 years. You having a husband and wife situation that sometimes maybe the wife is okay, but the husband is not, or vice versa. They don't want to let go. I get it, right? I get it. It's emotional when you've been attached with someone for such a long period of time, but especially when I meet husband and wives that they're in a situation like that, I always say, let's say if I'm working with the wife, I say, don't you want to be a wife again? Right? Where you don't have to be, you're not going to be the primary caregiver, where you're not worried about this 24/7, where you're not worried about what your husband's going to eat, if he's going to eat it, and vice versa. You want to be able to, he's in a community, your husband is going to be thriving. Now you can be a wife again. You can visit him. You can go and have conversation. You can see that he's happy. He's not, sitting in front of a TV all the time, or he's not just sitting there and there's no stimulation that's going on, right? When he's on activity, he's going to be flourishing. He's going to be with other folks that aren't probably even the same journey that he's on, right? And vice versa. And even when it comes to a husband, and maybe the wife is the one that's dealing with it, right? And, it's overwhelming when you are a primary caretaker of someone, because you have to worry about the whole gamut of things, taking them to and from doctor's appointments, making sure that they're eating, doing their medication management and all of that, and also having to also worry about yourself too. So I always say, try to prioritize yourself, your health, because if you are not good yourself, you cannot be there for someone else. Plan, talk to folks like myself, consult, get the information, because there's resources out there.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I can only imagine you get into this and you're obviously very knowledgeable on the situation, but sometimes you don't realize when you're getting into it, you're more of a psychologist sometimes in these situations where like you have to, just manage that.
Yes.
And the sensitivity that it takes to get through these and get people on the right track.
Absolutely. I'm definitely been a psychologist for sure.
Well, thanks for this. This is great. I really do appreciate you joining me here today. It seems like you have quite the job ahead of you. The population's getting older, and these are very real realities that you're helping people with. Before we let you go, though, I'd love for you to share how people could get in touch with you, learn more about CarePatrol, and how they could engage in your services.
Yes. So yes, you can find me on carepatrol.com/Metro North New Jersey. You can, if you forget to even type that, you could go to carepatrol.com. You can put in the zip code that you're looking for, like in terms of communities, and whoever's closest to that closest to that zip code will pop up. So if you put any of the counties that I mentioned, I will pop up, or anybody else who's close to it would pop up, and you just click on the, my little picture. You can get all my contact details. In terms of email, if you want to contact me via email, it's mowusu@carepatrol.com, which is MOWUSU@carepatrol.com, all one word. My telephone number is 973-281-2946. Again, that telephone number is 973-281-2946.
We'll include all that information in the resource section of the show notes as well for everyone who wants to reference that. Thanks again, Melina, and thanks to everyone who tuned in today's episode.
Don't forget to follow the Agent of Wealth on the platform you listen from and leave us a review of the show. We're currently accepting new clients, and if you'd like to schedule a one-on-one consultation with our advisors, please do so at bautisfinancial.com/call.
Thank you for listening to the Agent of Wealth podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Bautis Financial. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional financial planning and investment advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investments and financial planning.